On this Monday night, kids and COVID-19. New research shows how children carry the coronavirus as parents face the dilemma of sending their kids back to school or keeping them at home.
The plan feels very unsafe.
Plus, an Australian state's new curfew deemed critical. Isaias careening toward the Carolinas.
You should take this storm seriously.
Preparing for storm surge during a COVID-19 surge. App apprehension. The data TikTok could grab from your phone and why Trump wants it out of Chinese hands. And expanding underwater.
It'd be an incredible time for us.
The campaign to convert an eyesore into a tourist attraction.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. With the August-long weekend now behind us, a new and very different school year is fast approaching. Across the country, provinces have unveiled plans for getting kids back into classrooms, though many parents and students are still wondering how it will work and whether it's safe. In tonight's top story, Heather Yourex-West digs into the latest research on kids and COVID-19 and how public health officials are trying to manage the risks.
Send children back to class and risk infection. Keep them at home and risk their education or emotional health. It's a decision facing parents right now that appears to be no win. In Alberta, more than 6,000 parents have signed an open letter voicing concerns about the province's plan for getting kids back to class.
If you think about the fact that a lot of people have asthma, if you think about the fact that a lot of people have heart disease, if you think about the fact that a lot of children see their grandparents, all of these things create vulnerabilities from the get-go. And so it seems very difficult to simply say that we will just see how it goes.
Schools will be operating in uncharted territory, relying on research that is still incomplete with new data emerging almost every day.
I think all these studies, a lot of them contradict each other, and so it does make it really confusing.
Last week, a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found young kids with COVID-19 carried more virus in their nose and throats than older kids and adults. But that may not mean kids are easily able to spread that virus around.
I think that little kids, children are not coughing as forcefully. They may not have as many symptoms, so maybe they're not really coughing as much.
In Australia, where schools remained open during the first wave, data published Monday suggests that when physical distancing and hygiene measures are in place, the risk of transmission is low. After looking at data from 25 schools between January and April, researchers found that although 27 children or teachers went to school while infectious, out of a possible 1,448 contacts, the virus only spread to an additional 18 people. Of course, there are social and emotional risks to keeping kids out of school as well.
What we don't want to do is then have a cohort of kids that have missed really important parts of their education, which are necessarily, for most of these age groups, building blocks for their later educational success.
It's why many provinces are determined to get kids back to class, even as what is known about the virus continues to change.
There is still a lot of evidence from international sources and other jurisdictions that we are carefully reviewing. Our guidance will be updated in the coming weeks when we complete this evidence review.
So though the school year is just weeks away, back-to-school plans could still change by the time kids are ready for their first day. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
More than 6 months into this pandemic, the picture around the world remains grim. The spread of the virus is accelerating in a number of countries. In the span of just 4 days, 1 million more people have been infected with COVID-19. That brings the total number of global infections to more than 18 million, and more than 690,000 people have died. The World Health Organization warns there's still a long way to go in this crisis, and countries must strictly enforce public health measures to get infections under control.
We all hope to have a number of effective vaccines. However, there is no silver bullet at the moment, and there might never be. For now, stopping outbreaks comes down to the basics of public health and disease control.
In Australia, authorities are taking aggressive steps to try to get a major outbreak under control. After weeks of spiking case numbers, they've declared a state of disaster in the state of Victoria. With that come a series of sweeping new restrictions for a region that's already been in lockdown mode for weeks. Redmond Shannon reports on the shock and awe tactics in a region that had been one of the world's great success stories.
Melbourne, Australia's second largest city, deserted under a new nighttime curfew. And now the state of Victoria says all non-essential businesses will close starting Wednesday night.
This 6-week period is absolutely critical. We have got to make decisions, very difficult decisions, but we've got to err on the side of doing everything we possibly can to drive these case numbers down.
If there is such a thing as a second wave, then Victoria is a case study. Australia had all but eliminated infections until the new spike a month ago. It's winter down under, and similar-sized cities in Canada and elsewhere might well look to Melbourne to see how a second lockdown works out.
We'll see the effect of universal mask wearing in the numbers in the week ahead and ongoing. We'll see the effect of these restrictions in the following week.
Plans for an Australian travel bubble with New Zealand now on the back burner.
That will be a long way off, given what they're experiencing right now.
The Philippines is experiencing an even more serious situation.
We're waging a losing battle against COVID-19, and we need to draw up a consolidated, definitive plan of action.
President Rodrigo Duterte bowing to pressure from medics to act, imposing a 2-week lockdown on 25 million people in Greater Manila starting Tuesday.
I fully understand why your health workers would like to ask for such a timeout period. They have been in the front lines for months and are exhausted.
New infections have risen sharply since the first lockdown eased 2 months ago.
It would seem to me that in most countries that have experienced intense community transmission, the way out is long and it requires a sustained commitment.
The World Health Organization says it's also committed to finding the precise origins of COVID-19. It has started efforts in China to find an answer, and more work will be needed with Beijing's cooperation. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Pakistan's government has ordered a countrywide lockdown despite recording one of its lowest daily infection rates. Grocery stores and pharmacies are allowed to stay open, along with mosques and churches, providing people wear masks and adhere to physical distancing. The lockdown, which will be in effect for 2 weeks, follows the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha. It's to help avoid a surge in cases that occurred in June after Eid al-Fitr. A Norwegian cruise company has apologized and canceled upcoming trips after a major outbreak on one of its ships. So far, at least 41 people who are aboard the MS Roald Amundsen have tested positive for the virus. There's fear dozens of coastal communities in Norway may have been exposed as the ship stopped at multiple ports during trips in July. In a statement today, the CEO of the cruise company says he's sorry for mistakes that contributed to the outbreak. And there are reports tonight another cruise ship has been hit by an outbreak. According to authorities in French Polynesia, a passenger on the Paul Gauguin cruise ship in Tahiti has tested positive. The roughly 340 other passengers and crew members are now reportedly being tested and kept in their cabins. Turning now to the United States, where in the midst of a pandemic, millions of people are bracing for what could be a devastating storm. After skirting past Florida, tropical storm Isaias is picking up strength as it turns toward the U.S. East Coast. It's expected to make a direct hit tonight on the Carolinas, potentially as a full-blown hurricane, before heading north, reaching Canada later this week. Forecasters say the track and strength of the storm could change in the coming days. As for tonight, they're warning coastal communities to be prepared for flash floods, life-threatening storm surges, and possibly even tornadoes. Jackson Proskow has more on the threat posed by Isaias and what people are doing to prepare.
In the Carolinas, they're getting ready for whatever Isaias may bring.
You got to be prepared for the worst and hope for the best.
The storm is on track for a direct strike. Landfall will bring high winds, heavy rain, and more than a meter of storm surge in some areas.
I think it's just going to be a typical rainstorm. I don't think there's any really reason to worry or evacuate.
But along the coast, torrential rains are expected from Washington, D.C. into Maine. In New York, they're putting up sandbags and temporary flood barriers in lower Manhattan. There's a risk of widespread flash flooding and downed trees.
We want people to stay safe and stay in and stay home.
In a tale of dueling disasters, the worst impacts will be felt in states where the COVID-19 pandemic is surging.
We know the pandemic has dominated everyone's attention these last few months. But North Carolina emergency managers have been carefully planning for the storm response in a COVID-19 environment.
In this new reality, anyone staying in a storm shelter will be screened for COVID-19 symptoms. Masks and physical distancing are a must. Florida, which was spared a direct hit, shut down state-operated testing sites for days as a precaution, while coastal hospitals moved coronavirus patients inland, measures that may be needed again soon.
We're more prepared now than for the next one. We'll get better and better, and that's the goal, is to always get better.
The storm is part of an extremely active year in the Atlantic. Isaias is the 9th named system. It's rare to be this deep into the alphabet this early. And hurricane season is just getting started. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
Nearly 8,000 people are under an evacuation order in Southern California, where the so-called apple fire has exploded in size. Thousands of firefighters are battling the flames in hot, dry conditions. More than 10,000 hectares have been charred, and the fire is only 5% contained. Tonight, investigators have confirmed a vehicle malfunction ignited the fire. It began Friday when 2 fires merged in the mountains east of Los Angeles. The clock is ticking for TikTok's Chinese owner. Coming up, the U.S. president's ultimatum and the vast access the app can have to your phone, plus eliminating a communication barrier, the face masks that could make life easier for the hearing impaired, and new fears tonight about the health of a former pope. There's some big political news tonight out of Newfoundland and Labrador. We now know who will replace Dwight Ball as premier. The province's Liberal Party has announced Andrew Furey has won the race to become its next leader. He's a doctor and charity founder who's never held public office before. In February, Ball abruptly announced plans to resign. His departure comes as Newfoundland and Labrador deals with both the pandemic and a major financial crisis, with the provincial deficit skyrocketing. After being sworn in, Furey is required by law to call an election within a year. Despite losing its bid for a seat on the United Nations Security Council, Canada will provide support to UN peacekeeping missions in Africa for another year. The Defense Department confirms a military transport plane, which has been based out of Uganda since 2019, will continue its role transporting critical supplies and personnel. Many saw this promise as an attempt by the Liberal government to bolster its bid for a 2-year seat on the UN Security Council. But Canada lost to Norway and Ireland on the first ballot. U.S. President Donald Trump risks alienating young voters ahead of November's election if he goes ahead with the ban on the popular video app TikTok. The app, mostly used by people under 20, is owned by Chinese company ByteDance. Trump claims TikTok poses a national security threat because of its ties to China and is threatening to ban it if it's not sold to a U.S. firm by September 15th. And one American tech company is ready to snap it up. Here's Mike Drolet.
You either understand TikTok's popularity or you don't. Users post short videos of just about anything, including lip syncing and dancing. Half of all Canadians under the age of 25 have downloaded the app, along with over 800 million users around the world. And just as the U.S. accused tech giant Huawei of sharing user information with the Chinese government, it's now pointing the finger at TikTok.
It's a great asset, but it's not a great asset in the United States unless they have the approval of the United States. So it'll close down on September 15th unless Microsoft or somebody else is able to buy it.
For its part, TikTok maintains all its data is stored in the U.S. and inaccessible to the Chinese government. But it's not just the U.S. that's concerned. India banned the app a month ago. So how is it that what we put on our phones is a national security issue? Well, users give TikTok access to a long list of things. including audio and video, your address book, your GPS location, as well as all of your network and Wi-Fi connections. Put another way, everything you put on your phone, it now knows.
It can be sold on the open market. It can be sold on the dark web because every piece of data has a value. And ultimately, that information can and likely will be used against us. So we think that we're invulnerable. We're not. Even if we're not famous, our data can be used against us in some capacity.
So now Microsoft has 45 days to make a deal, which has been reported to be worth as much as $50 billion. But even if it doesn't, TikTok won't go away.
The app isn't going to summarily go dark, and we're not all suddenly going to get cut off from it. It'll simply be more difficult for new users to get involved or for the user base to grow.
And by then, another platform will have launched to feed our insatiable appetite for posting videos. Mike Trelay, Global News, Toronto.
Still ahead, why face masks are hindering communication for the hearing impaired. A German newspaper is reporting former Pope Benedict is seriously ill. According to Benedict's biographer, the 93-year-old is extremely frail, suffers from painful shingles, and his voice is barely audible. But the Vatican says his condition is not particularly worrying. Benedict resigned from the papacy in 2013 for health reasons. He was the first pope in 600 years to do so. More than 1.3 million Canadians have hearing disabilities. That's according to Statistics Canada. And nearly one quarter report they read lips to communicate. Now they're having to navigate a world where face masks are being worn to slow the spread of COVID-19. As Crystal Goomansingh reports, the hearing impaired community is advocating for wider use of a special mask designed to help meet their needs.
Masks are a part of daily life in the UK, and Mangai Sutarson is all too aware of the rules. Standing waiting for the moment someone speaks to her now fills her with dread. She says, for me, it's so important. It doesn't matter if I'm communicating with another deaf person or a hearing person. Lip reading is incredibly important. If someone is signing to me and they're not using lip patterns and mouth movements, it's impossible to understand. Sutarson is the director of Empowering Deaf Society. She understands the importance of masks, but wants everyone else to understand how they and other face coverings are leading to millions of people feeling excluded from society.
It's created just not only communication issues, but very much mental health issues. There's a lot of angst, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of fear.
In an effort to address those feelings, the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association is looking to the federal health minister to advocate for wider use of clear plastic face shields. They remove the barrier for those who need to read lips while keeping people safe. There are also masks with clear panels. To raise awareness, paramedic Danny Hughes took to social media recently to show people how he's using his phone to bridge the divide.
That some of our patients and service users rely on lip reading to communicate, and wearing a mask makes lip reading almost impossible.
Sutarson, like her Canadian counterpart, wants the government to advocate for more clear masks to be produced and used, allowing her to go back to doing regular tasks without heightened anxiety. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
I'm Alexa McLean off the coast of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, where there's a new push to make these waters an international diving destination. We'll tell you how next on Global National.
Nova Scotia is often described as Canada's ocean playground and has become known for a unique underwater tourist attraction. HMCS Saguenay was intentionally sunk to create a marine park for divers. It has been at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean for 26 years. Now one group is working to expand this artificial reef. Alexa McLean explains.
About a 45-minute steam from the waterfront of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, lies an underwater attraction these divers hope will one day double in size. An artificial reef poised for expansion, further securing Canada's place as an international diving destination.
We already have one amazing shipwreck out there, and to add what is a former Navy dive vessel
If we could add that close by, you could have a weekend of diving here in Lunenburg. It'd be an incredible time for us.
In July 1994, hundreds of people flocked to these waters to watch the purposeful sinking of HMCS Saguenay, a former Royal Canadian Navy destroyer. The steel warship now lies on the bottom of the ocean, an artificial reef home to countless species of marine life and a truly unique diving attraction.
There's nothing like dropping underwater, going down 60, 70, 80 feet, and all of a sudden seeing a military frigate just kind of coming into focus.
Now, a group of divers and artificial reef experts hope to give the Saguenay some company. For 20 years, the now derelict HMCS Cormorant has been docked in Nova Scotia at the port of Bridgewater. It's been falling apart for years, at one point even partially sinking. Now the Canadian Coast Guard is collecting proposals to have it towed away and scrapped. But this group wants the Cormorant turned into another artificial reef.
This could be a great solution to get it off the port there and into the ocean, spawning marine life and local divers.
Work is underway to formally pitch the Coast Guard. Strict environmental standards have to be met in order to reef a ship. We tagged along on this mission as they scout it for potential safe sites next to the Saguenay.
It needs to be nice and level with no great amount of life that could be disturbed.
The team believes it's found a perfect spot. Now they hope to pave the way for the Cormorant to sit alongside the Saguenay as a picture-perfect pair. Alexa McLean, Global News, Lunenburg, Nova Scotia.
And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, Your Canada is Alberta's Jasper National Park and the old Maligne Lake Boathouse built in 1928. Thank you for watching. Donna Friesen will be back here tomorrow. Have a great night.